Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be doing a video on how to analyze a position, or how to give it an evaluation, to be more specific. So giving it an evaluation is basically giving a position an engine analysis, essentially, which is completely based off of five elements. Let's go over those 5 elements, and let's also take a look at this particular position. So right now it's black's move, and the very first thing we're going to compare is material, because material is the first element. Both sides have queens, both sides have 2 rooks, and both sides have a knight and a bishop. Advanced players know that bishops are worth slightly more than knights, positionally speaking, because bishops are long-range pieces and can better maneuver around the board. But other than that, in the rooks, queens, and pieces, in the pieces sense, the position is equal. If we count pawns, however, black has 8 and white has 6. That means that black is up 2 points of material, which already gives black a very commanding edge in this position. Yeah, black's position is already better here because material advantage is one of the most steadfast advantages you can have in a position. The second thing that we need to look at is king safety, or how easy it is to attack the king, and if there are any checks or anything. The white king is very safe here. I mean, there's this, but there's really no move that can help converge on this. I mean, this doesn't work because the knight is in the way, and you can't really do this. It would be very hard to converge on this square, and even if you did, you just play f3, and yeah. So the white king is very safe. The black king, there's a lot of dark squared weaknesses, but the only piece that can take advantage of it is this piece right here. And right now, like, the white queen cannot checkmate the black king by her lonesome. So the knight could try to help, but the problem is that the knight can currently not come any closer, and the rooks aren't gonna do anything anytime soon. So black king's pretty safe too. The next part of a position is piece activity. So you could say that this black queen is very active because it's hitting a lot of things and it's defending a lot of things. But right now the white queen is challenging the black queen, so the black queen is either going to have to trade or he's going to have to move somewhere like queen d6. You could say that the black bishop is a bit more active than this knight. This knight has a purely defensive role because it's defending against this, and it's also defending against maybe this, or yeah, it's mainly defending against this, the fact that this bishop is hitting on this square. Yeah, so this knight is definitely less active than this bishop. As I previously said, this queen, you can't really say that that's active because it's going to have to move to a less active position. These rooks aren't terribly active because they're not on open files. Same with this. So you could say that black has a slight advantage in activity as far as the bishop goes. The fourth aspect of a position is to compare the central control. The easiest way to do that, remember this is the center. Oh, that's not the center. This is the center. The easiest way to do that is to count the number of pawns that influence the center in some way. Black has 1, 2, 3 pawns, but you also count the pawns that help support the pawns that influence the center. So you'd actually count this one, because this one supports this pawn, which controls the center. So, yeah. So black has 4 pawns that help with central control, whereas white only has 1 that is controlling that central square in particular. So black would be superior in central control here. And then the fifth aspect is pawn structure, which is you're looking for things like pawn chains, and you are avoiding things like isolated and doubled pawns. White has doubled pawns here, and white also has an isolated pawn, which is a pawn that cannot be defended by other pawns because there are no pawns here or here. So this is definitely a huge weakness. These two are weaknesses because they cannot defend each other. They have to be defended by some other piece, like a queen. Like a queen is defending this one, but no one is defending that one. So a future move might be bishop to d5, which would be hitting this. So yeah, white's pawn structure is definitely weaker, whereas black's has a couple of nice pawn chains here. These 2 pawns may be doubled, but this isn't really a huge weakness right now because the queen is very nicely defending it, and the only real way that you could try to exploit this is maybe with knight here, but it is not white's move right now, so you're going to have to wait on that. And that is the 5 elements of a position. So knowing the 5 aspects, which I'll list them again. They're material, king safety, piece activity, center control, and pawn structure. Now you know all 5 of those. What would be a better move here, this or this? So centralizing or trading, which one would be better? I'll give you a couple seconds. The correct answer is queen captures on c1 because it is a general rule of chess that if you are up in material, black is up 2 pawns, then it is always good to trade material because it is actually an art that is called simplification. And the more you simplify in chess, the more likely you have, the easier it is to win, because the less pieces your opponent have, the less counterplay that your opponent has to try to turn around the losing position. So, because now it is much harder without a queen for white to try to repair the position now. Now the position is just completely lost here. Because let's take a look. So, it really... Oh, whoops. Okay, so if it doesn't really matter which rook takes, there's no difference, but let's say this rook takes, what's going to happen here is rook, it really doesn't matter which one, but let's just say rook f to c8, challenging this rook, and one of 2 things are going to happen. Either trades, and the rook takes the file, like let's say you play something like this, now the knight is once again limited. You try doing this, but then just trade, and now you have this weakness, this weakness, this weakness. After bishop to d5 is played, hitting this, the knight is pretty much stuck guarding this. e4 is coming, and you have a passed pawn that is going to be created soon, and there's also this pawn right here that can also march through. So see that in action here, here, and yeah, this position is just absolutely crumbling. What move do you even play here? This position is so bad, I don't even know. I don't know. Here? I mean, you just get that. Here. Honestly, white would just make random moves here. And yeah, now black is starting to run into moves here. Here. And just do this, and now black is starting to run into moves here. Probably have to move this. Oh! Comes a check. But as you can see, this position is just not great here. Check. This pawn is going to come closer, and yeah, these 2 pawns are just going to win. Okay, so that is how that position is working out. Let's check out this next position. So remember the 5 elements. The first one is material, so let's compare material. Black has 2 rooks. Both of them have queens, bishop, and knight, so that's equal. The bishop is slightly more valuable than the knight, especially in a position like this where it's open, so maybe it would have a slight material advantage. Now let's count pawns. Black has 6, white has 5, so actually black has a slight advantage in this position in this sense. Now let's take a look at king safety. Black's king is still in the center and is vulnerable to the rook maybe coming down with a check, maybe after these rooks are doubled. It's also maybe vulnerable to this. It is also, yeah, and also maybe after the knight moves, it may be vulnerable to this check by the queen. There are a lot of different checks that this king could be very susceptible to, whereas this king is very safe. Its only weakness is on the dark squares, and the only check right now is this, which is instantly stopped by this. So, as far as king safety goes, white definitely has the advantage. Now, if we look at piece activity, this bishop, it's not really great because it's actually eating these pawns, because all of these squares on the diagonal are right now not available. Only these 2 squares are. Let me highlight them. This one and this one. This rook is extremely active. It's taking the entire file. This rook is not active. This rook is not active. This rook is not active. So definitely this rook has an advantage in activity. This queen is kind of defending this key square. It's defending the knight. It's defending the rook. It's defending this pawn. This queen. Wait, let me draw these arrows again. This queen is just very nicely just hitting all of these potential critical areas. And this queen is kind of doing the same thing. It's protecting this weakness, it's protecting this, It's also protecting this pawn. It's also protecting this critical d1 square, which could be used by the rook later if there is some kind of convergence. So yeah, both of these queens are very nicely centralized, I would say. But white definitely has an advantage as far as piece activity goes. Moving on to the next section, which would be what exactly? I know one of them is pawn structure. If we take a look at pawn structure, for both sides, the pawns are connected, so it's not really a problem. Oh, center control. So, as far as center control goes, so there is one pawn here controlling this, and there's one pawn here controlling this. Well, we could say that there's two pawns controlling this and two pawns controlling this, but it looks like that center control is fairly equal in this position. Both sides have pieces that are slicing through the center here. So, oh, and also there's knight. So both sides have some counterplay in the center. I'd say that the center control is pretty equal here. And now we have to figure out what move would be best here. Is bishop a6 a good move? Pinning this. Is rook to d8 a good move? Let's see here. Is e5 a good move? Just trying to make some progress here. I'm going to give you a second to evaluate that and see what you can find. So definitely the best move in this position is castles, and let me tell you why. So if we look at e5 here, this, as you can see, the position immediately goes to white, and that is because of this check here. And after the king moves, this bishop is gone. So that's why that's flawed. If you try rook d8, same thing. If you try bishop a6, going for this pin, do you know what move wins here for white? This, again, actually. Because king e6 trying to attack doesn't actually work because now it's a discovered attack, and now actually this wins for white because now you're picking up the queen. So that doesn't work. So if you do this, this is unfortunately defended by the rook. That's why this rook is so handy. And now, free piece. So yeah, bishop a6, this pin does not actually work because all it does is it puts the bishop in the line of fire of the queen. It allows for a discovered attack. If you don't actually discovered check, actually. If you don't already know what that is, you can look it up, and I also kind of just showed you what it is. So there you go. So remember how I talked about how king safety is definitely the most acclaimed, one of the most acclaimed elements of position. So castles is definitely the best move here. Future move could be rook to d8, challenging this rook, because this rook is a really nicely placed piece. So definitely a future move might be this, or this. And this queen is just really nice here. Future move for the bishop might be here, just trying to get rid of this knight, because this knight is very nicely placed, hitting these central squares. You know, you just have to look at all of the elements. But we made the right move here. The right move here was castles. So, now let's take a look at this position. So, now let's go through the 5 elements real quick. So, material. Both sides have 2 rooks. Both sides have a queen. Both sides have 2 bishops. Both sides have 2 knights. Now we got to compare pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So black is up a pawn, which gives black an automatic advantage as far as material goes. If we take a look at king safety, the black king is susceptible to this check specifically, but after bishop to d7, really there aren't any real problems here. The king is fairly safe behind this wall of pawns here. So the king is fairly safe. This king, however, is not. All of the center pawns that may defend it here, they're all gone. So this king is susceptible. This king is susceptible from all angles. It could, like, for example, the bishop or queen might be able to come in from this diagonal. These pawns may start marching forward and start to try to attack him in the center. This king is very susceptible to checks and attacks in the future, most definitely. The next thing is piece activity. And as far as piece development, development and activity go hand in hand here. White has 1 piece developed, black has 2. White's bishop is slicing through here, which is definitely nice. Black's bishop is slicing through here, which is definitely nice. And the knight is also trying to control these 2 critical squares here, which is also very nice. But black definitely has the advantage here as far as development goes. If we move on to the next position, then the next thing, which would be center control, white has 2 pawns, black has 2 pawns. So black has a lot of pieces that are trying to fight for the center. White has some pieces that are fighting for the center. So the center control seems fairly equal in that sense. But yeah, black definitely has the advantage here, because if you take a look at the pawn structure here, this pawn structure is really weird because it's extended out, whereas black's is definitely more inward. It's definitely more inward. This actually looks like a check mark. It's much easier to defend this than it is to defend this. I mean, right now this is probably a weakness. It's defended by 2 pieces, but both of these pieces are undeveloped, so yeah. This is going to be a weakness, this is going to be a weakness, and this is going to be a weakness. So, as far as pawn structure goes, black definitely does have slightly better pawn structure in this sense. So now, you knowing all those things, which one would be better, takes or back? Or maybe castles. Or maybe this. Or maybe this. Which one do you think is better? Okay, so I am actually the reason why this is not terribly good is because this knight here is sitting here undeveloped, right? It's right now kind of stuck to this pawn here, guarding this weakness here. This knight does not have very many good squares that it can go to. So trading off an active and developed bishop for an undeveloped piece actually helps white, because now white has a rook that is going to help this pawn push here and make a break on the king side. So it's actually only helping white in this position. So now comes the question, is this or this better? Well, I personally don't even know, actually, because this move, it leaves the bishop to control this huge expanse. So as far as a positional sense, it might make more sense here. But if you do this, it challenges this bishop here, which is the only developed piece that black has. If trades, then you develop the queen, and if queen c2, then trades, and then maybe after queen e7, then you have a pretty solid position here. So we're actually going to go ahead and see which one's better, which one has a better evaluation. So this one actually improves black's position slightly. Let's see what this one says. So both of them are fairly good moves, but in this case, as far as positionally speaking, we're going to stick with this one, because this one controls this nice long diagonal here. So yeah, I mean, with this diagonal, maybe after like knight c6 and e5, then this diagonal can be closed. So I feel like this might be a bit more powerful. Maybe that's just me. But yeah, that concludes this video on how you evaluate positions. A very useful tool if you ever want to become good at analyzing positions and finding the best move in a very specific position that doesn't necessarily win instantaneously, if that makes any sense. And yeah, so thank you for watching. See you next time.